Elijah Banks is a man who commands respect. As a respected state attorney, his word carries weight in the courtroom, and his presence demands attention. But in a courthouse parking lot on a quiet afternoon, that respect means nothing. To the 4 FBI agents who surround him, he is not a pillar of the justice system. He is just another black man in a suit who fits a description. Their commands are cold, their hands are rough, and the handcuffs they snap onto his wrists are a humiliating declaration of his supposed guilt. They ignore his badge, his title, and his dignity. But their catastrophic error is only just beginning. For Elijah Banks is not a man who will accept this injustice quietly. He is the system they are abusing, and he is about to turn its full, unforgiving weight back on them. This isn't an arrest. It's the first domino to fall in the utter destruction of their careers. The late afternoon sun baked the vast courthouse parking lot, making the black asphalt shimmer. Elijah Banks stepped out of the climate-controlled silence of the building and into the humid embrace of a Carolina summer. His tie was still perfectly knotted, his suit, charcoal gray and impeccably tailored, a second skin of professional authority. It had been a long day of procedural hearings, but a successful one. He allowed himself a small, satisfied breath as he clicked the key fob for his sedan. The sound that shattered the quiet wasn't his car unlocking. It was the aggressive growl of an engine and the sharp screech of tires as a black, government-issue SUV swerved into the lane ahead of him, blocking his path. Before he could process it, a second SUV pulled in behind, pinning him. Doors flew open. 4 men in the uniform of casual power, polos, tactical pants, holstered weapons, converged on him with practiced, predatory efficiency. Their movements were not rushed, but deliberate and intimidating. "Hands where we can see them, now!" The command from a tall agent with a close-cropped beard was a cold dart of sound in the warm air. Elijah's mind, trained for decades in high-stakes litigation, shifted instantly from end-of-day fatigue to hyper-aware analysis. He didn't startle. He slowly placed his leather portfolio on the ground and raised his hands, his posture straight, his gaze steady. "I'm Elijah Banks," he stated, his voice calm and projecting, a tone he used to command a courtroom. "My credentials are in my inside jacket pocket." The agents didn't pause. One, younger with a tense jaw, grabbed his raised wrist and wrenched it behind his back. A second agent, the one who had spoken, roughly shoved his hand into Elijah's jacket, yanking out the wallet. He flipped it open, glanced at the official state ID and badge, and snorted, tossing it onto the roof of Elijah's car as if it were a worthless trinket. "You match the description of a suspect in an active case," the lead agent, whose nameplate read Weller, said, his voice devoid of interest. "A description of what?" Elijah asked, the first flicker of anger warming his chest. "A black man in a suit? You're at a courthouse. There are hundreds of us." His logic was met with brute force. Weller pushed him forward, his chest hitting the hot metal of the SUV's hood with a jarring thud. The familiar cold steel of handcuffs closed around his wrists, too tight, biting into his skin. "You're making a profound mistake," Elijah gritted out, his face pressed against the dusty hood. "Save it for the interview," Weller replied, his tone bored. From the corner of his eye, Elijah saw another agent pop the trunk of his car and began rifling through it. Files from active cases, a sealed envelope for the appeals court, privileged, sensitive state material, were handled with careless, grubby hands. "That is privileged state material. You have no warrant." Elijah's voice rose, the controlled attorney finally giving way to raw outrage. "Should have thought about that before matching the description," a third agent muttered, pulling a suit jacket from a hanger and shaking it out. The surreal horror of it crashed over him. His title, his career, his entire identity, it all meant nothing. In this parking lot, he was reduced to a stereotype, a problem to be processed. He was just another one. He was shoved into the back of the SUV, the door slamming shut, plunging him into a dark, silent world of tinted glass. He could see the courthouse, his domain, receding through the window. The anger settled into a cold, hard knot in his stomach. This wasn't just a mistake. It was an insult, and Elijah Banks did not tolerate insults. The processing was a masterclass in dehumanization. His belt, his watch, his wallet, the trappings of his life were taken. He was placed in a cold, windowless room, cuffs still on. Requests to call his office, his son, the governor's council, were met with averted eyes and the hum of fluorescent lights. Hours bled together. He sat perfectly still, not with defeat, but with a terrifying, focused calm. He was cataloging everything, the agents' names, their badge numbers he'd glimpsed, every procedural violation, every arrogant smirk. Finally, the door opened. A junior officer, unable to meet his eyes, uncuffed him. "There's been a mix-up," the officer stammered. Elijah stood, flexing his bruised wrists. The skin was raw and angry. "I identified myself," he stated, his tone low and dangerously even. "I presented my credentials. I was never read my rights." He stated each fact like he was entering it into the record. "You are all witnesses to a gross abuse of power." He walked out of the room. Agent Weller was leaning by the exit, arms crossed, looking irritated, not apologetic. "You're free to go," Weller said, his voice flat. Elijah stopped and turned. He didn't say a word. He just looked at Weller, his gaze stripping away the agent's authority, seeing only the small, prejudiced man beneath. The look lasted a lifetime, and in it, Weller saw his career flash before his eyes. Then Elijah turned and left. His car was a violated space. Files were disheveled. His glove box hung open. His laptop case was unzipped. He methodically documented every disturbance, every fingerprint. The drive home was silent, the knot in his stomach hardening into diamond-edged resolve. At home, his son Eric saw the bruises and the look in his father's eyes and knew better not to ask questions. Later, alone in his study, Elijah wrote a single name on a blank notepad. Weller. It was no longer just a name. It was a target. The next morning, the battle began not with a shout, but with a subpoena. With the help of his fiercely loyal chief investigator, Carmen, Elijah started pulling threads. They obtained every camera angle from the courthouse. The footage was undeniable. Him identifying himself, being ignored, being assaulted. Carmen, a woman with the tenacity of a bloodhound and the discretion of a spy, dug deeper. She found a pattern: complaints against Weller and his team, unlawful stops, aggressive interrogations, lost evidence, stretching back years. Each had been buried, dismissed with a rubber stamp. Elijah worked with the cold precision of a surgeon. He drafted narrow, perfectly legal subpoenas for FBI communication logs. He called in favors, leveraging his reputation to get expedited judicial approval from a sympathetic judge. He was building a case, not against a suspect, but against a corrupt system. The pushback was immediate and insidious. Requests were suddenly lost. Allies in other offices grew strangely unavailable. A shadowy SUV was spotted tailing Elijah's car. A surveillance photo was emailed to him from an anonymous account. A clear message: "We're watching." The threat escalated from professional to personal. While driving home with Eric one night, their car was ambushed. Shots rang out, shattering the rear windshield. Elijah's instincts took over, swerving through side streets, protecting his son, his heart hammering not with fear, but with a furious, protective rage. They escaped unharmed, but the message was received. Elijah didn't back down. He doubled down. He sent Eric to stay with family and began working from secure off-site locations. He obtained internal FBI metadata, thanks to a conscientious junior agent, that proved the systematic deletion of incriminating body cam footage and evidence logs. The wall of his office became a mosaic of corruption, connected by red string. Names, dates, locations, cover-ups. It was no longer about his arrest. It was about a cancerous unit that had operated with impunity for years. The system began to turn on itself. Whistleblowers emerged from within the FBI, providing damning testimony. The media, led by a tenacious investigative journalist, ran with the story. State attorney survives ambush linked to FBI misconduct probe.
The public outcry was immediate and deafening. Elijah's calm, devastatingly factual testimony before a state oversight panel was the final nail in the coffin. He presented not with emotion, but with an irrefutable mountain of evidence. The panel granted him full investigative authority. The house of cards collapsed quickly after that. Senior agents resigned in disgrace. Weller and his core team were suspended, then arrested. The FBI's local field office was shuttered pending a full independent review. The Department of Justice issued a formal apology. The courtroom on the day of the sentencing was packed, not with raucous spectators, but with a solemn, respectful silence. Survivors of the agent's abuses sat in the gallery, their presence a powerful testament. Elijah sat on the prosecution table, not with triumph, but with grim satisfaction.